Hello and welcome. I'm Leanne Gerrans and you're watching W News Extra, broadcasting live from the Al Arabiya studios. These are our top stories. The price of oil drops after Trump makes assurances, but a Secretary of War promises the most intense day of US strikes on Iran. Meanwhile, Russia's Vladimir Putin holds a phone call with the US president to discuss the ongoing conflict and a solution to the global energy crisis. But critics say Trump is not taking the war seriously as he jokes about sinking Iranian ships. Now, oil prices have dropped today after US President Donald Trump told reporters the war with Iran would end very soon. Oil rose to over $100 a barrel on Monday, but is now closer to $90 a barrel after the US president said the US was very far ahead of schedule. But they hadn't won enough yet. Take a listen.
It's the beginning of building a new country, but they have no Navy, they have no Air Force. They have no anti-aircraft equipment. It's all been blown up. They have no radar. They have no telecommunications. And they have no leadership. It's all gone. So, you could look at that statement. We could call it a tremendous success right now as we leave here. I could call it, or we could go further. And we're going to go further. But the big risk on that war has been over for 3 days. We wiped them out in the first 2 days.
Meanwhile, Secretary of War Pete Hegseth said today would be the most intense day of strikes. Take a listen.
We will not relent until the enemy is totally and decisively defeated. But we do so on our timeline and at our choosing. For example, today will be yet again our most intense day of strikes inside Iran. The most fighters, the most bombers, the most strikes. Intelligence more refined and better than ever. So that's on one hand. On the other hand, the last 24 hours have seen Iran fire the lowest number of missiles they've been capable of firing yet.
To discuss this and all of today's stories, I'm joined by Managing Director of This Is Dubai, Michael Jabri-Pickett, and correspondent and columnist Gemma White. Michael and Gemma, great to have you on the show with me. Michael, let's start with you. So we just heard from President Donald Trump there and also Secretary of War Pete Hegseth. Do we have any clear idea of when and how this war will end right now? Because that's the question everyone wants to know the answer to.
I don't think we have any idea, never mind any clear idea. I do think that when the war does come to an end, I think it'll be comments very similar to what Donald Trump made and Pete Hegseth made, which will be essentially a grocery list of what they have accomplished. So it'll be we fired X number of missiles, we dropped this number of bombs, we destroyed their military, we destroyed their leadership, we destroyed their navy, we sank 51, 36, 42. I've heard him say different numbers of ships that they've sank that are at the bottom of the ocean now. And that, I think, is the best that he's going to be able to do, because the way the regime in Iran is structured, it's not just cutting off the snake or the head of the snake, and then everything falls apart. It doesn't work like that. There are too many variables, and there are also two other parties that you have to consider, which is, even if the US says that they're done, will Iran agree? And then also, will Israel agree? And Iran has said, just in the last little while, that they will not allow 1 barrel of oil to be exported through the Strait, which tells me that they're pretty determined to fight till the very end. And yet, only about 20% of the 92 million people that make up Iran are, analysts say, in supporting the regime as it is. So I don't know that you will have a consensus of all of the Iranians and the Americans and the Israelis. And then we're talking just about the military side. There's the economic side, there's the technological side, there's the war of propaganda. There are so many different fronts that each side is trying to put their case forward to convince the public that they have in fact achieved whatever it is that they want to achieve. So until all of that happens, and I don't see how we're ever going to get to that place where everybody's going to agree that, yeah, it's over.
It's quite interesting because there's been no sort of consensus or cohesive answer to this question. As you do say, everyone said something different without there actually being an explanation. And we know that that's really important for uncertainty that people are feeling in this time at the moment. And I'm sure everyone around the world is looking for those answers from President Donald Trump and Pete Hegseth and Benjamin Netanyahu. But Gemma, one thing I think is really interesting in this war, and I think will come down to how this war ends, is oil prices, because they've gone down. Yesterday, 120 a barrel at the open. That was a huge spike we saw in Asia trading when Asia opened their markets after the weekend. But really, the global economy and the volatility right now is causing stress.
Yes, so it is. The oil prices have come down, but they still remain so volatile because they're linked to the ongoing situation, which, as we can see, changes, hour to hour, and they're also linked to how confident the markets feel in what Trump's coming out and saying. And as you've said, you're getting 3 or 4 different versions of events here, so that will add to the confusion, and that adds to the lack of confidence, and again, that affects the oil prices. Now, analysts have been looking at short and long-term effects here. Now, short-term, you've got an energy price spike, you've got the market volatility, and you've got higher inflation. Longer-term, you've got slower global growth. You've got the potential for a global recession and an energy crisis. These are globally world-changing events that could possibly come of this the longer the war goes on. So it's affecting energy markets, and that in turn affects the shipping, that affects inflation, that affects financial markets, and then that affects absolutely everything else. Your manufacturing, your food production, your aviation, your transport. So the knock-on effect will take you down to even to what the American consumer is going into their store and buying on a weekly basis. I wonder if that's when it will really, start to hit home.
Completely.
So if oil stays above 100, you've got the risk of inflation. You've got global trade and shipping being affected. As we see, the Strait, has it been closed? Hasn't it? Again, we don't really know, but we do know that global shipping has been wildly affected. You've got ships stacking up, waiting to move. The financial markets are more unstable because investors react to these geopolitical shocks very quickly. Now, you've got airlines and logistic companies, they're sort of failing to, reach their commitments. There's so much going on, but it does right from the very top, and it goes right down to the very smallest thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And I did see an investor speaking today exactly on the oil prices and how markets are reacting. And they were saying it's very difficult at the moment because it's headlines. Headlines are coming out all the time. They're moving the markets, and it's really deciphering what headline they should make an investment on and what headline is actually newsworthy other than the slew of what's coming out, which is a constant barrage of headlines. And people have to work their way through that, and markets are sensitive to all those headlines. But I did think it was quite interesting because a little bit earlier on today, the US Energy Secretary said the US Navy had escorted an oil tanker through the Strait of Hormuz, but literally he deleted the post about the Navy escorting the vessel minutes after he put that up. So there seems to be confusion around the Strait of Hormuz and what's getting through. But a lot of the problem, they're not insured with war risk to be able to go through the Strait of Hormuz and the dangers it presents to them. So there's so many challenges when it comes to this. And of course, we've seen energy infrastructure in the Middle East be hit. And the problem with that is it can't get through the Strait of Hormuz, and just more and more barrels of capacity are mounting up, and it can't be stored.
With nowhere to go.
Nowhere to go. But we talked about a lot of different things earlier, and what I find quite interesting is you mentioned the propaganda side of things, and we must remember that's really important when it comes to a war. But you also mentioned technology, and GPS jamming is definitely something that we've probably all experienced right here in the Middle East. Michael?
Yeah, it's certainly something that, when the Russians are accused of interfering in U.S. elections, it's through technology. And it's one of the strengths that analysts will say the Iranians have right now is their technological aspects to interfere with their neighbors. And GPS jamming is one of those. So I have lots of friends who have talked about how Google Maps or Waze hasn't been working so much for them, and they're not necessarily connecting the dots, but it just seems to be a little bit odd at this moment. And it is one of the fronts that Iran can consistently put forth where they know they have been able to be effective. And this is how, and we've talked about this over the past few months, this is how war is changing. We see the situation with Ukrainians and the Russians, and the way that the Ukrainians and their ability to manipulate and use drones has worked to their advantage, and that's changed what it means to be on the battlefield. And I also think that technology and our reliance on our phones, that's another front that an opponent can open up and make a real significant impact on people's lives. So maybe civilians aren't necessarily getting bombed like they might have during the Second World War, but they will affect people. Maybe, money will be taken out of accounts, or maybe phones won't be used. And we, in this country, we know that your phone is your security passport to so much of your personal data. And if an opponent is really good at manipulating the system, I think there could be a lot of trouble.
And Gemma, I want to talk to you a little bit about stuff that's been making the headline news, and it's really this Iranian football team who were in Australia. They've now been granted asylum and they can stay there. But what's the story being behind this?
So yeah, the team was in Australia, and initially it was 5 women who have been granted asylum, but since that there's been more women who said they wanted to stay as well. Now, it was very cloak and dagger, so it perhaps feels pre-planned, or maybe it was spur of the moment, but these women are watched 24/7. They have minders with them. They have minders while they eat. They are followed around the hotel. They're taken to their games on buses. These minders do not let these women, these players, out of their sight. And yet, something happened in the hotel they were staying in where the minders were distracted enough for these 5 women to be able to leave the hotel, because there were reports from the hotel that their minders were running around trying to find these women. So Australia has said they're very welcome to stay. They're going to be staying on like temporary visas, that kind of like a student visa. And it's interesting because there was a phone call as well with Donald Trump, who had said to the Australian PM, if you don't take these women, they're more than welcome in the US. So almost a political pawn as well they've become, inadvertently perhaps. They've decided they don't want to go back to Iran because what happened is they hadn't sung the national anthem at the game, and they felt that that would put them in danger. I don't know if they have family members in Iran. I don't know if they're married, children, extended family. So their main fear now, irrespective of how safe they feel in Australia, is perhaps repercussions for their families.
And families back at home. And of course, the headline news coming out of the US probably won't settle those fears either. But thank you so much for your thoughts on that. Let's move on now. When President Trump has spoken to Russia's Vladimir Putin regarding the ongoing situation in Iran. The two leaders talked after the biggest spike in oil prices since Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Trump said Putin wanted to be helpful to Iran as sanctions on Russian oil are temporarily eased. Take a listen.
I had a very good call with President Putin. We had a lot of people on the line from our side, from his side. We were talking about Ukraine, which is just a never-ending fight. And there's tremendous hatred between President Putin and President Zelensky. They can't seem to get it together. But I think it was a positive call on that subject. And we obviously talked then about the Middle East. And he wants to be helpful. I said, you could be more helpful by getting the Ukraine-Russia war over with. That would be more helpful. But we had a very good talk, and he wants to be very constructive.
So we heard from Donald Trump there. I've never heard him say he's had a bad phone call, let's be honest. He had a very good phone call.
Always good.
And it seems like Russia and Putin are using this war at the moment for their own political gain, because Putin has been muscling in there where he can.
Yeah, I did not have Putin stepping up to kind of be peace or deal broker on my 2026 bingo card, and yet here we are crossing it off. Yes, is he using this for political gain? Absolutely, 100%. I don't think anyone would be shocked by that analysis. But he is in line for a few strategic gains, quite in the short term, if he can mediate between Iran and the US, which seems to have been the crux of this phone call. But Trump, beyond what he was saying there, hasn't released any further details about the nitty-gritty of what they spoke about. So Russia can step in with oil and gas production. That means a boost in their income. And we're talking about billions of dollars here, which, again, they could then put into the military, and that will aid their war against Ukraine. You also have the global attention has shifted away from the Ukraine. Ukraine's not in the headlines anymore. Just to throw it out there, Epstein isn't in the headlines anymore. It's all the Iranian war. So he's successfully diverted, political media attention. Russia becoming a diplomatic peace broker, which I know, Michael's going to be talking about as well in depth, is quite mind-blowing in this situation. He's fighting a war and then he's going to mediate in another war. Okay, don't even know how that happens. And there's so many economic opportunities if Middle East, as we say, the supplies fall, or they're stuck, or they're stranded, and there's no way to kind of shift them. It's not all positive, though, for Putin. There are some things that could happen. There are risks. Iran is one of their key allies, so the instability there does weaken them. There is potentially a major global recession coming, which, given Russia has now been at war for 5 years, they don't need that at all. And then if the conflict does stabilise quickly, say in the next few days, that oil price boost is going to disappear. Interestingly as well, just, briefly, there are benefits for Zelensky as well. You've got what's been called, and I found this quite fascinating, drone diplomacy. So we've done all other types of diplomacy, and now we're doing drone diplomacy. And Zelensky has been sharing Ukrainian technology of shooting down Russian drones with Middle Eastern allies and with the US. So it's kind of amazing that these two countries are at war, and then suddenly they're seeing strategic military and financial benefits in this other war.
It's absolutely fascinating. And they have been able to try and test this technology because they have been in an active battlefield. So in many respects, they're the perfect people to help with this situation. Also, another note, when it comes to Russia, they could actually be giving Europe oil and gas, which is also fascinating, because we've seen that big disconnect with Europe supporting Ukraine and not Russia. So a change could possibly happen here. But I mean, Vladimir Putin, he's been in the game a long time. He has been in the game. He was a KGB officer. He's been a long time president. He knows what's happening. But is he actually a mediator?
Vladimir Putin, the peacemaker.
Yeah. He's got skin in the game a little bit. He's been there a long time.
If he steals that Nobel Peace Prize from Trump, he's going to be livid.
I'm gonna try and play. I saw somebody talking today. They were saying, I'm playing Grand Theft and somebody's playing chess. I'm not sure who's playing what, but I'm going to try and put my Vladimir Putin, what does he think hat on, which is, so he knows that he's going to have to rebuild his public image.
Yeah.
He knows that he has, for whatever reason, a unique relationship with Donald Trump. He knows that at a certain point, the war with Ukraine is going to come to an end. He knows that the president could probably force the Ukrainian president into a deal that's maybe more favorable for the Russians. So why not play that relationship to the best of your ability? I'm sure that Vladimir Putin also knows, according to Senator Lindsey Graham, that Cuba is next. And we know that, Russia and Cuba have had a very long relationship for going back to the Cuban Missile Crisis in '61. So I wonder if Vladimir Putin is also thinking about, those frozen Russian assets, right? All of these things are in his mind, I'm sure, when he's having these conversations. So is he going to be the peacemaker? That would surprise me. And I don't want to steal your thunder, because you said something really interesting beforehand, where you thought that he actually might be someone who could help get things done.
I had a long think about this, and I spoke to someone on my earlier show who was former CIA, and he made a really good point to me. He said, who phoned who? President Trump phoned Vladimir Putin, the first phone call, but Trump initiated that phone call. And he was saying to me that right now, they need a mediator. They need someone who can speak to both sides. And Russia can do that. Russia can speak to Putin. Putin can speak to Donald Trump. And also, Putin held a phone call with Pezeshkian today, who is the president in Iran. We also saw Sergei Lavrov, the foreign minister in Russia, holds a phone call with Abbas Araghchi, the foreign minister in Iran. There's a lot of back-channel diplomacy going on here. And I wonder if Donald Trump is trying to orchestrate some sort of discussion. And he thinks Putin is the person to do it. And also, you made a good point, and I thought about this. Putin has lost Venezuela, Syria, key allies, Iran. So it's also in his interest to be able to try and mediate this and find some sort of ground. And he can say that as a win and possibly still have an ally in Iran. And if Cuba falls, that's another tower that's fallen for him. I don't know why. Maybe I'm wrong, but I wouldn't rule Vladimir Putin out of this.
So the only hole that I see is Vladimir Putin definitely would have access to the Iranian politicians, but there's a real disconnect between them and the IRGC.
Yes.
And they're the ones with the real power, they're the ones with the weapons, they're the ones that are going to do whatever they're going to do. But to your point, I would say that when the American president is looking to the Kurds to perhaps be the next government in Iran, which has been floated out there, Vladimir Putin might be able to come in and say, I actually know, because the top 40 people have been killed. Donald Trump has said the first layer is gone and the second layer is gone. So maybe Vladimir Putin, with their Russian assets, they know who's next. So there might be that he can put forth some people to be the next leader that would be acceptable to the president. And then, of course, you said something earlier that was really cool, where you thought, what if Vladimir Putin were to
steal the Nobel Peace Prize from under Trump's nose?
Because he sorted this whole war out. And then a couple of weeks later, he ends up stopping the fighting with the Ukrainians. He's stopped now 2 wars.
Exactly.
Man of the year, that would be.
Man of the
absolutely.
year. But it's quite interesting because Steve Witkoff, one of Donald Trump's envoys, who does a lot of negotiations, we must say that, he said Russia said in a call yesterday that they had not shared intelligence on US military assets. Putin also confirmed position in favor of rapid de-escalation of conflict in the Middle East. Just picking up on Witkoff, he said Russia said in a call yesterday that they did not share intelligence on US military assets. When I asked the former CIA guy earlier, he said, come on, Russia have shared intelligence. And he also said China probably has too.
Yeah.
So, there's a lot happening, but it's interesting to see how Vladimir Putin is putting his hat in the ring here, and it will be interesting to see if he does get that Nobel Peace Prize. But thank you for your thoughts on that. Let's move on now. And President Trump has been accused of not taking the conflict seriously enough after he joked about sinking Iranian ships. Speaking from his Mar-a-Lago estate, the US president told fellow Republicans it was more fun to sink the ships than actually capture them. Here's what he had to say.
In fact, I got a little upset with our people. I said, what quality of ship? Excellent, sir. Top of the line. I said, why did we just capture the ship? We could have used it. Why did we sink them? They said, it's more fun to sink them. I said, They like sinking him better. They say it's safer to sink him. I guess it's probably true.
I always think Donald Trump shoots from the hip, but we haven't seen social media posts from a president like we have from President Trump. We don't really hear them talking that way. What do you think of the Trump team's media push at the moment?
So this is the age in which we live, and it's also the White House in which this is the way that they operate. Let's look at the new mayor of New York City. He was incredibly successful because of his presence specifically on TikTok.
Indeed.
On social media, it was huge for his win to become the current mayor. And I think Donald Trump, because he does shoot from the hip, his greatest success has been on the campaign trail when he won in 2016, and then again last year, or now more than 18 months ago. When he does speak from the hip, that is what makes him so appealing and attractive to his base. And his greatest victories have come when he's campaigned and then he's won the election. But his biggest downfall is consistently when he is standing up, shooting from the hip, instead of being a statesman, instead of being the president. It's as though, when you're of age, say you're 21 years old, and somebody who's even older has a conversation with you and says, you're no longer 16, you're now 21, you have to act your age. Donald Trump has never, it seems, accepted that there is a persona that the president has to have. Instead, I think he constantly reverts to where he has been most successful, which is when he says the most outrageous things. And so for him to try to temper that natural instinct, I think is maybe something that in the first term, some people in the White House would have worked with him to try to do. But now he is, I think, allowed to let go, and he speaks what he wants to say.
I find it quite fascinating because Pete Hegseth, the Secretary of War, we had him speaking a little bit earlier. We had a clip of him. And I always think he did my job, but on Fox News. So Pete Hegseth was a TV anchor.
Yeah.
Donald Trump has been a TV personality. And sometimes when I watch both of them, I actually think that comes through. Less statesman-like, more soundbite-like, more sort of reality TV show, TV personality, and that's very much the Trump administration that we see right now in the second term. And I think that sometimes comes through because you said something to me earlier, like a president should be like a dad. They should be able to comfort us, make us feel certain in uncertain times. Well, Donald Trump doesn't really do that, does he?
No, but you saw as well from the clip, he's in a room full of people laughing at anything he says. So that, it solidifies in his mind that this is a great gag that he's made, which I personally found really distasteful. Irrespective of who you're at war with, that's completely unacceptable for me. But yeah, he is so surrounded by sycophants who will laugh at absolutely anything he says. So why not keep making those jokes?
I guess he calls it Trump deranged syndrome, but he does. But Gemma, we have to talk about Donald Trump because so many celebrities have not been happy about him, and now they've spoken about the propaganda, and it isn't the first time it's happened. Tell us about what was released and why it's causing so much mayhem.
So this is the latest video from the White House. It's titled Justice the American Way. And it's quite short, it's about 30 seconds long, but it is made up of loads of clips from American films and TV shows. You've got Tropic Thunder, Top Gun, Iron Man, John Wick, Breaking Bad. Sort of not sure what having Breaking Bad on there is trying to tell you about the state of America, but there you go. Now, what's happened is Ben Stiller, who was the star of Tropic Thunder, which is a very funny film, he messaged, he went on X and he called out the White House asking, we never gave you permission to use this clip from the film and have no interest in being part of your propaganda machine. War is not a movie. Now, I watched the video and it's like it's aimed at 12-year-old boys, it's like it's real frat kind of humour. I was disappointed to see that Team America. Clips were not in there because, to be honest, the actual video just gave off Team America vibes completely. I would have been really... It should be the trailer for Team America 2. I think that's what this video should be. But it's not the first time. So, even over recent months, you've had likes of Sabrina Carpenter and Olivia Rodrigo asking for their music to be removed from White House videos. And I found this quite funny. I mean, how bad do you have to be that you even upset ABBA? I mean, global icons, ABBA, but in 2024, they demanded their music be removed from a White House video, and they join the White Stripes. Celine Dion, again, who could upset Celine Dion? Foo Fighters, Beyonce, Neil Young, and the Rolling Stones, who've all threatened legal action to have their music pulled from White House videos.
Devil's advocate here, I don't know what you think, but they also get a lot of coverage and back in the headlines if they say to Donald Trump, pull our song, we don't want it on there. I haven't heard about Ben Stiller in years, and now all of a sudden I hear his name because he's complaining.
But
they capitalise on it too.
I get, but I mean, the Rolling Stones, they don't need the publicity.
True.
ABBA doesn't need the publicity. Celine Dion doesn't. Beyonce certainly does not need the publicity. But no, I think I would be, if my art was being used in a way that I fundamentally disagree with at its core, I'd be calling it out as well.
Yeah. I think that there's a lot to be said there, and we saw that AI-generated clip. It was just playing on the screen then, as you did say. In times like this, sometimes Donald Trump's memes can actually be quite amusing, and the AI-generated content can bring some humour, but I think in a difficult situation, like you said, Michael, maybe just a little bit more statesmanship would be appreciated.
I also think that because especially in the second term, he has surrounded himself with people who are going to bend the knee, right?
Of course.
He doesn't have career diplomats, right? Pete Hegseth is a perfect example. Somebody who came from the world of news and entertainment in front of the camera.
I actually like Pete Hegseth.
I know you do, and I'm not criticizing him, but that's his team, as opposed to some of the people that would have surrounded previous presidents.
Yeah.
And the team, their responsibility is, of course, to make sure the president doesn't look bad, but it's also to pass along advice or to use back channels to make sure that a message gets to the president, to make sure that he does not do this, or it's better if he talks about this. And I think that this whole war is a perfect example of where the Trump administration has failed. Because if you had Pete Hegseth and Donald Trump and Benjamin Netanyahu, for that matter, the three of them all saying the same 6 sentences consistently, whatever it is about what is going to achieve victory for for America and for Israel, I think everything would be so much smoother than it is right now.
Also, we must remember one thing. There's a WhatsApp, isn't it? They could just create a chat like he did before on Signal, remember?
Right.
And he released
just
it by
don't include
mistake.
a journalist.
But just don't include a journalist on it, basically.
Yeah.
There's the basics right now if you want to get things connected. I do find it fascinating looking into the Trump White House, because I often wonder if this is going to change politics forever going forward.
I think the next president should come on and he should make sure that he hands his, first of all, not youth, or she, absolutely, and not go on Truth Social, and make sure that, first of all, you have to use videos. So if you're going to be on, you have to have a professional team doing it, rather than Donald Trump trying to be emphatic and going into capital letters, which seems very indicative of the age.
Thank you for your attention, Donald J. Trump.
So,
but it's fascinating how the whole world has changed. We talked about propaganda that's on social media when it comes to the war that's happening in Iran right now. We talk about diplomacy. Donald Trump does it over social media. We talk about foreign policy. It's over social media. Elections are won and lost on social media now. Tariffs. I mean, if Donald Trump didn't have Truth Social, I feel like my job would be a lot quieter. It would, wouldn't it? We wouldn't be so busy all the time.
Do you want a quiet life?
No. I never wanted a quiet life. I don't know why. I mean, I'm doing it for the love. Anyway, now it's that time of the show where Gemma and Michael have chosen two of their quirkiest stories of the day. And Michael, we're going to talk about yours because it's about the marathon, the LA marathon at the weekend, and that is also causing controversy, a lot of controversy in the US at the minute.
Yeah, and this one I think could have been avoided quite easily. So on Sunday, the LA marathon took place, and so when the professionals take off, it's in the morning, and temperatures would have been about 60 degrees, so 15 degrees Celsius. And then when the amateurs would have run, it would have been about 26 degrees Celsius, and much hotter. And so there was concern, so the organizers of the marathon said, that people would be running in incredibly hot temperature. And as a result, they gave everybody the option not to do the full 26 mile run, to stop at 18. And that could have been fine. But instead, what they took that next step where I think this is where they dropped the ball. And they said, you will get the same medal if you do the 18-mile run as if you do the 26-mile run.
It's not a marathon. If it's not 26.2 miles, it's not a marathon.
You didn't run a marathon if it's not the full...
Absolutely.
You got the medal or you didn't get the medal. I'm sorry, you didn't win the marathon. And a little temperature, it might be hot. Slow down, walk a little bit.
If you've already ran 18 miles,
why not?
What's another 8? Like, not so, I know it's difficult, but I'm just like, what's another 8? You could walk it.
Yes, you can walk it.
In fact, this is what marathon runners have said online, is that actually you sometimes have to look at a marathon as, 18-mile warm-up. It's actually, the race is the last 8 or 10.
Absolutely. First of all, why would you run a marathon?
Yes, as I said earlier, I love not running marathons.
I love not running marathons. I've got no interest. But if you did run the marathon and you ran the full 26 miles, I don't even know how long it is, good for you.
Yeah.
I'm proud of you. Don't give up at 18 because it might be a little bit hot.
Also, the people who did do the full 26, they're thinking, why am I getting the same one for somebody who did 8 fewer?
Yeah, I should have just got an Uber,
For the last 8 miles.
8 miles, imagine. And Gemma, your story is about something that we both love, and it's the latest emojis. And why are they getting everyone talking?
We were excited about this, but there were other people in the office who were kind of not really as excited. We've got 13 new emojis coming. We've got some coming soon and then later on this year. So the new ones coming are Bigfoot.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. A fight cloud, so it's like an exploding cloud with like stars around it. Kind of like in cartoons, when they get hit on the head with a hammer and then you get like all the kind of things tweeting around their heads. You've got an orca. We've already got whales, but now you've got an orca. A landslide, a trombone, a treasure chest, a ballerina, which I thought was great, just in time to troll Timothée Chalamet perhaps a little bit more. And then the one that people are most excited about is called Distorted Face. And it's rosy cheeks and bulging eyes, as if you've just said something that you shouldn't have said, and then here we are, and then you're like, oh my goodness.
You know who it looks like? It looks like the face of the Finding Nemo fish from Finding Nemo.
Oh,
Nemo, Dory?
Yes, Dory. Yes, very
okay.
good. But I'm more curious in 6 months or 6 weeks or 6 years, how Bigfoot is going to be used, because emojis represent an expression or a feeling, and the Bigfoot, the obvious one is that somebody comes in and steals your glory, right? They Bigfoot you, but I wonder if Bigfoot will be used in a different way.
I think that's the whole point of emojis.
Yes, it is.
They are
to have a whole conversation
frequently used
with
in different ways.
Yes.
Yeah, so that mum and dad have absolutely no idea what you're talking about on WhatsApp. Now, these actually, there's 9 more coming later, and we've got 2 hand gestures, so they're thumbs, left and right thumbs, a squinting face, which is me when I take, my glasses off, a meteor, a lighthouse, a butterfly, an eraser, a butterfly net, and a pickle. Do with those, Gen Z, what you will.
the aubergine emoji.
I'll be using the pickle.
Yeah.
Will it replace the aubergine? Who knows?
Yeah.
But obviously the main interest here is how they're going to be used beyond their, initial meaning.
I absolutely must admit something. I love emojis. We both spoke about
Yeah,
this.
yeah.
There's nothing better. And sometimes they don't even need to mean anything. They just look cute.
Just have a whole
You know, I
conversation
love
of
the fact
emojis.
that we've got like the zoo emojis now, like all the animals.
Yes.
I just love the fact that they're so cute. You know, there's loads of different animals. I don't know. I'm a very big fan of the emojis.
It's nice, and it softens the blow. You know,
Yeah.
you might want to dump someone over WhatsApp, and then you're like, but here's a cute turtle emoji.
Do you
Exactly.
get
Soften the blow.
dumped over WhatsApp, or do you just get ghosted now? when
Then you
get
could just
dumped?
send a ghost emoji.
Oh my God. To be honest with you, I think that, you know, the days of going around someone's house and dumping them
Yeah.
face to face are
It's long
over.
gone, yeah.
You either get ghosted or you might get a message on WhatsApp
Yeah.
or where it might be, you know, it's not you, it's me situation.
But emojis help you just cut out all
Yeah,
that
that's
chat.
true. That's true. So they're useful for one thing, maybe, but Bigfoot just like crushed the relationship.
Yes.
I don't know.
There you go.
There we are. Mike, I must admit something. I don't know very much. I put the emojis on, but I have no idea their meaning. So maybe I'm not the best person to ask. But thank you to today's guest, Managing Director of This Is Dubai, Michael Jabri-Pickett, and correspondent and columnist Gemma White. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Follow us on X, G&T. That will be coming up next. Goodbye, good evening, and thank you for watching.